Good morning and happy Thursday or Friday to you College Prep English 2 students. This is Mr. Lelinski coming to you virtually from my office to talk to you a little bit about The Great Gatsby, which is a text we are beginning when you view this video. I'm recording this video a few days ahead of time, so it'll be ready to post and ready for you guys to view it and get rolling on The Great Gatsby. Just as a note to you ladies, when you view this video, there will be a quiz associated with five questions about what's posted in the video. I will indicate in the video when the questions come up, but you need to be aware that you should be paying attention to this, and there will be a quiz associated with the video. The video will post next week, Thursday. That will be April 2nd, and the quiz will be available April 2nd and April 3rd. You will have one opportunity to take the quiz on my DSHA, and the quiz will have 5 questions. It will be multiple choice, okay? So please be aware that that is happening. With that business out of the way, let me say welcome to you all. I hope that your week has been going well, and I want you guys to know that I've missed you. I've missed our time together in class. I very much enjoy being home with my family, but I do miss you guys. I miss our interaction. I miss seeing your faces. So I just want you to know that. Personally, I have been doing a lot of stuff around here. I've been enjoying walks with my dog and my family. I've been enjoying a lot of time with my kids, which is mostly awesome and sometimes a little bit frustrating because they're kids and they don't always listen and do what they need to do right away. I will say, and this is question 1 for the quiz, my son Joey and I have begun our first board game of Risk. Now, by the time you guys see this, the game will probably be long finished, but we've been playing a couple of turns a day for this whole week, and he gets really frustrated and upset when I roll and beat him, but he gets really, really excited when I roll and he wins. So it's been fun to do that with him. It looks like he's going to beat me in the game. We probably have one more day of playing left, and it's exciting to be able to spend that time with him doing that. So by the time you see this, he will likely have conquered the world in the game of strategic warfare called Risk. So it's a fun board game if you haven't played it. I want you guys to know also that I very much, I'm just looking at my notes here in case you're wondering, I have very, very much enjoyed the videos that you guys posted and created for your catcher presentations. I know the technology was often challenging to work with, but it seems like at this point, everyone has been able to submit. So I'm happy to say that, we're making the best progress we can given the technology that is, present and that we have to deal with this in this virtual schooling situation. So also be advised, one thing that's especially important for the Catcher in the Rye and for our class generally, and will be important for the Great Gatsby, is the way in which Catcher connects to certain aspects of American identity and also challenges certain aspects of American identity. Any good work of art is going to provoke thought in both of those ways. And I think that Catcher does so, and Gatsby really does so as well. So we want to keep that as a focus for our discussion and our questions and kind of in the back of our mind when we're going through the various assignments that we have for our class, okay? So, just so you are aware, there will be discussion posts basically every day, and the discussion posts will work as follows. You will be required to submit sometime earlier in the day. What you don't know, or what you actually will know at this point in time, is by the time you view the video, is that we'll move all deadlines for all assignments across the school to 11:59 p.m. And 2 things need to happen before 11:59 p.m. for our discussion posts. You need, first of all, to post initially to the discussion board your answer to the question, and then you need to post one reply to one of your peers. Now, for that reply to your peers, you can't just say, "That's great, and I agree with you," because that's not how discussion works. And if we all just say everyone is wonderful, then we won't actually challenge ideas and benefit from the activity of having that sort of discussion post. So by 11:59 p.m., you are responsible for submitting one post to the discussion board and one response to one of your peers. What I'll write in the assignment is that 3 p.m. is the deadline for the initial post. I can be flexible on that, but if we all wait until 10 o'clock at night, it's going to be difficult for us to finish the assignment on time. So what I'm really concerned about is that we get a post in early and then a response in after that. So those posts and responses will deal with The Great Gatsby. The purpose of this video is to spend some time introducing you to F. Scott Fitzgerald's celebrated novel, The Great Gatsby. So at this point in time, what I'll do is move our screen over to show you a little bit of a PowerPoint that takes us through some introductory material for The Great Gatsby. Please understand that this PowerPoint is also available on The Great Gatsby topic, which publishes Thursday, April 2nd on my DSHA. So, The Great Gatsby. First, we should know a little bit about F. Scott Fitzgerald. His name is Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald. He is upper middle class. He's got this upper middle class upbringing in Minnesota. He's actually from St. Paul, Minnesota, one of the Twin Cities. Question 2. St. Paul, Minnesota. That's where Fitzgerald is from. Okay, question 2. Where is he from? St. Paul, Minnesota. This upper middle class upbringing, his parents don't have a ton of money, but they expose him to, the arts. They expose him to cultural institutions that allow him to be cultured, I suppose, and to have exposure to those kinds of things. He's educated among the elite, but his parents had less than most of his peers' parents. So they put him in a position to be schooled with those people, but not to be, they just didn't have the same money as those people. His father's family was one of the most prominent in the Twin Cities and in the Midwest. So they did have what's called old money. They didn't make their money in their lifetime. They inherited their money. That's the difference between old money and what we'll understand as new money in discussion of the text. They were landowners, they were politicians, and they were aristocratic WASPs. WASP is an acronym for White, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. Okay, so white and Protestant are self-explanatory. Anglo-Saxon means that Fitzgerald is descended from people who lived in Great Britain, that they were English in their heritage. Okay, he's named for his ancestor Francis Scott Key. Bonus points if you can figure out who that is and why that person is important. There aren't actually going to be bonus points, but it's an interesting story. And there's this concept of breeding that these old money families often engage in, which is to say you have to get the right person to marry. They sort of have to come together as individuals to make sure they maintain their status. That's what that's all about. New money. His mom's family was Irish immigrants who rose the social scale due to the grocery business. That's the difference between old and new money. They made money in their lifetime, whereas dad's family inherited that money. They're immigrants and laborers, and they simply acquired and accumulated money. There's no romantic origins. Move over our video here. He mused that he was a European aristocrat, accidentally dropped on his parents' doorstep. So for a bio of Fitzgerald, he's educated at Princeton. That's a really big deal because he's plugged into the traditional upper class of America. If you attend an Ivy League institution, if you can be connected to the families that have that have gone to those institutions for generations, then you're going to be connected to a very powerful segment of society. And he loves and hates this situation. He recognizes the idealization of wealth, and he romanticizes love. He's attracted and repulsed, and enchanted and offended by these concepts of wealth and love. And it kind of parallels Nick Carraway, the narrator of The Great Gatsby. Functions on opposing forces and ideas. So, does wealth, we want wealth, but is wealth good for us? We want love, but can we have love? Those are the kind of opposing forces and ideas that are present here. And his literary career from academic failures, he doesn't graduate from Princeton and he joins the Army as a necessity. And he still relied on his parents as a safety net throughout his career. He writes This Side of Paradise, which is a college student's guide to the Jazz Age, which is a period in American history, roughly, the Roaring Twenties, you could say. And he embraced his own literary celebrity and lives as an embodiment of the zeitgeist. So, like, he lives as a representation of that time. He captures what it means to be of that time. But he never accepts or celebrates it. He becomes an alcoholic, and This Side of Paradise is not a drunken accident. It's a literary work. It's a creation of art, but it is in his life he becomes an alcoholic, and it winds up affecting his health pretty significantly. He was an expat, an American expatriate, which means that he lives abroad mostly. Famously in Paris, he lived abroad. And his noted friends are Gertrude Stein, who's kind of running a literary group of Americans in Paris, Ezra Pound, who's a poet, and Ernest Hemingway, who is very well renowned in his own right as an author. It's competitive and petty, and especially with Hemingway, and that represents a lot of the hollowness that Fitzgerald recognizes in 20th century relationships. His lifestyle of consequence: he accrues debt, he becomes impoverished, he declines artistically, and he dies early. I believe Fitzgerald was 44 years old when he died of a heart attack. Modernity and modernism. So what is modernity? Really, we're talking about a big change in American ideology and identity. The frontier is closed, all right? So there's no Wild West anymore. The nation is settled. You don't have battles taking place on the Great Plains. You're not incorporating too many more states, although a few do get incorporated, most notably Alaska and Hawaii. Our identities coming together. We're ramping up industrial production, and we enter this more advanced era. So what is this feeling, this zeitgeist of the 20s? There's a lot of money and a lot of nouveau riche. Nouveau riche is that concept of new money. So there's a lot of growth of wealth. There's prohibition, which means it's illegal to drink. And the novel The Great Gatsby actually takes place in this era of prohibition. So even though there's all that drinking going on in the novel, it's during prohibition. The United States is a global economic power, and this concept of modernism, and this is question 3 here, ladies. Modernism is the artistic expression of the new, and it's the modern era at the start of the 20th century. So it's in the embracing of the cultural modes while simultaneously expressing lingering ambivalence, which means, like, you understand that things are changing and things are new, but you don't really care. You're ambivalent about how this all works and functions. Most notably, and this will be your second part of question 3 here, ladies, it's marked by the new narrative styles and themes of alienation and detachment, as in you're alienated from the world around you and you're detached from other people. So these are major topics that come up in modernism. What are the origins of this? Well, what's going on in the world at this time? The Great War. You're talking World War I. There's mechanical production, the scale of which has never been seen before. There's carnage and destruction. Talk about trench warfare with people rising up out of trenches and then running across no man's land and being just mowed down by machine guns from machine gun nests on the other side of no man's land. So the amount of death, the carnage and destruction that's taking place is unlike what anyone has ever seen before, and that shapes a whole generation's thought. There's disease, and there's this quote, "I'm young, I'm 20 years old, yet I know nothing of life but despair, death, fear, and fatuous superficiality cast up an abyss of sorrow." So that quote sort of captures, when you're 20 years old, you shouldn't feel that way about life, but Fitzgerald does feel that way about life. And it's this dark recognition of the era in which he lives. So that's the alienation and detachment. And because of all this, Fitzgerald's generation becomes known as the lost generation. And modernity does not equal progress. So in this time, there is, however, massive literary and cultural production. There's a lot of art, there's a lot of literature, and a lot of music. Jazz, one of the greatest contributions America has ever made to anything ever, and I mean that sincerely. The jazz age really takes hold here. And it's coming from a lot of places. Expatriates like Fitzgerald and Hemingway and Pound and Stein, mostly living in Paris, the Harlem Renaissance, Zora Neale Hurston, and many, many other wonderful authors are producing during this time. And then there's regional voices, authors like William Faulkner, for example, who is representing, the ideology of the American South, is coming of age in this era and writing a lot about that particular aspect of identity. What are we dealing with stylistically and formally? There's a lot of experimentation. We expect a story to progress in a certain way, to exist in a certain way, and that's changing. One thing that we see, and this is a part of what we're experiencing in a lot of Holden's expression, is this thing called stream of consciousness, which means that literature tries to represent thought and the way that thought progresses. There's this concept of the unreliable narrator. Again, something that Salinger toys with Holden. How much can you trust him? You're going to see that again with Nick Carraway, our narrator for The Great Gatsby. And you have to ask yourself right from the beginning, what do you believe about what he tells you? Because he's not quite as obvious as Holden when you uncover it. So you have to be critical of what Nick tells you. There's subjectivity, which means, again, what's true and what's not true is understood in the eyes of the person who sees it. And there's this move away from polemics and ethical truths. There's a questioning of whether or not the world is organized in a certain way, and there are ethical boundaries that we need to adhere to. And that's a part of what's being represented in the subjectivity of the form. And there's a move toward ambiguity and vagueness. There'll be less concrete, direct answers to the questions raised in this text than, say, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, because the whole point is to raise those concerns and say, we don't know what the answer is. Modernist narration in The Great Gatsby takes form in this way. It's the first-person narration of Nick Carraway, and it asks a couple of questions. What is true? The modernist trope of the unreliable narrator, we see that again in Salinger, and we see it often throughout the 20th century. It's famously created with Nick Carraway. Who's the protagonist? Meaning, who's the story really about? That's a huge question for this text. And what is the setting? There's this dislocation of time, and we don't know when things are happening, but place is meticulously charted in this text. Ladies, just so you are aware, these questions here are going to be a part of question 4, okay? So we get to the preface. You have to understand The Great Gatsby does not proclaim the nobility of the human spirit. It is not politically correct, and it does not reveal how to solve the problems of life. It delivers no fashionable or comforting messages. It is just a masterpiece. Sometimes, ladies, text and art exists to show you how difficult it can be to exist in a certain place and time and what challenges we encounter as human beings. Gatsby is often celebrated for the ideology of parties and of this whole mystique of Gatsby the character. But I think once we look more deeply into this, we'll see that the work itself holds a much, much deeper and more profound suggestion of how to think about humanity. And Fitzgerald says he just wants to write something new, something extraordinary and beautiful, and something intricately patterned, and he does so. Again, these are the questions that are raised for question 4 on your quiz. Just wanted to show those to you one more time. And then as far as the novel is concerned, we have all of these topics that are presented. I don't want to call them themes because I think we can confuse theme with topic as follows. I think it's easy for us to say that theme is a word. Theme is a concept, when really theme has to be a whole sentence. So these topics that are presented here, these topics, love and money, love of money, these are the big, huge ones that come from a lot of the narrative, and they sort of, underneath all of this are all these topics that come from this concept of money and love that the text brings up. So all of these things are taking shape in the novel. All these things are present in the novel, but they all sort of fall underneath the concept of love and money, or love of money. And this would be question 5 on your quiz. What are the major topics presented by The Great Gatsby? All right. Just so you have a map of New York, a lot of what happens in the text takes place in 3 places. There's West Egg, East Egg, and you have Manhattan. And that's what's happening where when they travel, when they get in the car, they're usually going to Manhattan. Excuse my phone there for a second, ladies. So that's what's happening there. There's the Long Island Railroad that plays a part in what's happening here. And this is just a good representation, a good simple representation of what we see here. When Nick describes East and West Egg in chapter 1 of the novel, it's supposed to describe how it looks like if you were looking at a profile standing up. So like there's a mound that takes shape over the water of East and West Egg. It's not the actual presentation of what you see here. But it's like a geographical feature. Like there's a hill on West Egg and a hill on East Egg that looks similar. So and here's our epigraph. And this will relate to our first discussion post for April 2nd for you even students and April 3rd for you odd students. So that's Thursday and Friday. The epigraph says, "Then wear the gold hat, if that will move her. If you can bounce high, bounce for her too, till she cry, lover, gold-headed high-bouncing lover, I must have you." This is attributed to Thomas Park d'Invilliers. And my question for you with this, ladies, is what theme or themes is or are introduced? So with that, I'm going to conclude our introduction. Thank you for watching. As always, ladies, please reach out to me via Teams if you have questions or concerns. We can chat, we can video chat, we can talk as a class. I'm happy to be here to support you. This online learning stuff is a challenge for us, and I just want you to know that I'm here for you guys. I'm ready to help whenever you need, okay? Also, before I sign off, make sure to take care of yourselves. Go outside, enjoy your family, remember to practice appropriate social distancing, and I sincerely hope to see you all very soon. Take care.